divider, or it can be used as a combiner, power combiner. So the property of the E-plane T is that if you are applying any input signal at port number 1, then that will be available at port number 2 and 3 in equal magnitude but out of phase. And if you're applying two signals which are out of phase at port number 2 and 3, then the combined signal will be available at port number 1. But if you apply uh, two signals which are in phase at port number 2 and 3, then the output at port number 1 will be once again the sum of the difference of the two signals. So the output power will be 0 if the magnitude of the power at port number 2 and 3 both are same. And the next device was H-plane T. So here you can see that once again this is a power divider or combiner, but the property is little different. Here the H arm that is treated as port number 1. So if we apply any signal at port number 1, then at port number 2 and 3 you will get same amount of power, but the signal available at port number 2 and 3 both will be in phase. And if you want to combine two signals, then those two signals must be applied at port number 2 and 3 and both must be in phase. Then you will get a sum of the power at port number 1. And if the two signals at port number 2 and 3 they are out of phase and same magnitude, then the output at port number 1 is going to be 0. So you can see that whether it is earlier case or the current case, the auxiliary arm, that is the additional arm. So in case of E-plane, it is also called as difference arm, because if you apply for signal at port number 2 and 3, so its difference is available at port number 1. So if both the signals are out of phase, so difference will be what? One is plus and another is minus. So plus and minus of minus the other signal. So it will become what? Sum. That's why the auxiliary arm is called as what? Difference arm. Whereas in H arm, it is called as sum arm. Why? Because if you apply signal at port number 2 and 3 and both are in the same phase, so that will get added and you will get output at port number 1. If they are out of phase, then once again the addition of the two signal is going to take place. But since one is positive and another is negative, the addition will be 0. That's why the auxiliary arm in case of H-plane T is also called as sum arm. Okay, and whichever device we are going to discuss, all are mode dependent and they are going to work for T10 mode. So if we change the mode, then the performance of the device will change. Now we are going to move to the combination of E-plane and H-plane, that is called as Magic T. So today we are going to talk about Magic T.
Sir.
Huh.
Sir, I have a doubt. Sir, why this is happening that signal should be in phase for H and out of phase for E-plane T?
So in the last lecture, it was said that, see, it is all happening because of the, we'll take the new diagram for that. See, if I draw the two plates of Magic T, sorry, E-plane T, okay, so it is like this, cross-sectional dimension. So if I apply any signal at, suppose port number 2, this is port number 2, this is 3, and this is 1. So this is T10 mode, which is traveling. And what is going to happen at this turning point? Because here it's a corner, fringing is going to take place like this. Okay, and you can see this is how the field gets coupled and will move towards port number 1. And if suppose a signal is applied from port number 3, and let us consider that it is having opposite orientation, that is out of phase. So if that goes, okay, so here once again the fringing is going to take place here. Okay, now you can see that how the signal has got coupled. The black signal and the red signal both have got the same orientation. It means that if we apply the two signals at port number 2 and 3, and both are out of phase, so because of the fringing effect, the fields from 2 and 3, they get coupled in such a way to port number 1 that both are going to get added. So if I consider that this is what V1, and here it is what minus V1. Why I have written 1, 1? Because they are having same magnitude, but they are out of phase. So here this is, I said that it is difference arm. So output at port number 1 will be what? V1 minus of minus V1. So it is going to be 2 times of V1. This is what.
Yes,
So
sir.
it's all.
Yeah, I got this, sir. So this fringing effect will not happening in E plane.
No, that is not going to happen in this H plane T.
Yeah, sorry, H plane.
H
Yeah.
plane. So they are, because the orientation of the auxiliary arm is along the H field. So there the structure is something like this. Okay? Like this. So suppose you are applying field from here. Right? Now you can see that the field is what bounded by, it is held by what top and bottom plate here. And similarly, if you look at the other arm, so there you can see that the field is once again bounded by top and bottom plate. So if this field comes from here and this field comes from here, so you can see that the top and bottom plate, they are always there. There is nothing like bending effect like here in our earlier case. These were the two regions where the fields, the fringing of the field were taking place because of the change in the shape of the boundary, you can say. So here that is not happening actually. So field which is bounded by top and bottom plate here and here, that same this boundary, that is top plate and bottom plate, is also available in H arm. So there is nothing like fringing effect in this case. That is the reason why the orientation of the field is not going to change.
Got it, sir. Thank you.
Okay. Okay, now I'll move to the magic T. So magic T is simply the combination of the earlier two T's. Magic T. So in case magic T, now I will not be drawing the details, the 3D structure. I will simply say that this is my E plane T. This is E arm, and this is the main waveguide. Okay. And when I say that it is H plane T, so main waveguide along with the H arm here. Okay. Now these two are combined. So you can see that the main waveguide, it remains as it is. Okay. Like this. Now E arm, so additional port you have to create by adding additional waveguide. So it's like this. And here it's H arm. It's wider. But the dimension, cross-sectional dimension, will be same for all the waveguides, whether it is auxiliary or primary. It's like this. So you can see it is simply the combination of E plane T and H plane T, and the name is given as magic T. Now the property of this is that I will name the port so that you can remember the property. 1, 2, 3. There is no fixed sequence. Randomly you can number them. So 1, 2, 3, 4 ports. Okay. So here the third port is third arm, you can say it is auxiliary arm, and the fourth one, that also is auxiliary arm. But third one is called as E arm, and the other name for E arm is what? Difference arm. And the arm number 4 is called as what? Sum arm. Okay. Or H arm. Now the property of all the port is that if you apply any signal at port number 1, so what is going to happen, that the signal will get divided between E arm and the H arm, the way it was happening in the when the two T's were separate. And similarly, if you apply any signal at port number 2, we apply input at port number 2. So same thing. The power will get divided between what? Port number 4 and port number 3. So you can see that the behavior of port number 1 and port number 2 both are same. So that's why I said that randomly you can number it. There is the behavior. What will be the direction? Either you call this port number 1 as port number 1 or port number 2 as port number 1. The behavior is going to remain same. It's not going to change. Now the property of port number 3rd. Now we are considering what all the ports are. One by one, they are going to be treated as input port. So if you are applying anything at port number 3, then the output will be available at port number 1 and port number 2. No output will be available at port number 4 because of the coupling effect. And the signal which will be available at port number 1 and 2, they are going to be out of phase, as we have discussed earlier. Similarly, if you apply any signal at port number 4, then the output will be available at port number 1 and 2, and both are going to be in phase. And no signal will be at port number 3. So you can see that port number 3 and 4, they are isolated. That is, if I apply anything at port number 3, so at port number 4, output is going to be 0. Similarly, if I apply anything at port number 4, then at port number 3, the signal will be 0. And similarly, from 1 to 2 and or 2 to 1, that is port number 1 and 2, they are isolated. So this is how it behaves actually. Now, okay, it's a property of the magic T, but where can we use this device? So multiple applications are there. I will take one of the cases. So let us consider that that I will be using this port number 4 as an input port. Okay. My goal is what? To measure unknown impedance. Unknown impedance, which is connected at port number 2. So I will name it as Z. U means unknown. And at port number 1, I will connect a known impedance, which is variable in nature. Okay, I can vary it. Now, so the port number 4 is acting as an input port. Port number 3, now I will have a power meter here. So I will call this port number 3 as output port, and there I will be connecting power meter. Okay, so there it is it's power meter. It will read the power available at port number 3. Now we'll use the property of the magic T to find out what is the unknown impedance. And here I have a variable non-impedance. So I will write K, ZK. It is non. So what you do, that feed a signal. Now that signal, as per the nature of the device, that will get divided in 2 parts equally, and one will be available at port number 1, and another is going to be available at port number 2. So now ZK, that is set by me, so I know what is the value of ZK. But ZU, that is unknown to me, and I want to find out what is the value of ZU. And let us consider that ZU is not equals to ZK. But by varying ZK, I can bring that ZK equals to ZU. But that can happen only if I know the value of ZU. Otherwise, it will be like trial and error. So let us consider that ZU is not equals to ZK. And the signal which is reaching at port number 1 and 2 from port number 4. Because the impedances ZU and ZK, they are different. So what will happen that different amount of power will get reflected. Now you have been learning this impedance matching using the this Smith chart. So all those matching this procedure techniques we are discussing to achieve the matched condition so that the power delivery will be efficient. Okay, so here also, because of the mismatch in the impedances, whatever signal which is troubling, which is coming from port number 4 and reaching at port number 1 and 2. So let us consider that ZU and ZK both are different, and the mismatch is going to take place. And because of the mismatch, what is going to happen? That at port number 2, let us consider, since the port number 2 and the ZU, they are not matched, so reflection is going to take place. So if the reflection is going to take place, what is going to happen? That there will be a signal, reflected signal, which will come back inside port number 2. Means from port number 4, some part of the signal or 50% of the signal is reaching at port number 2, and when it reaches to ZU, it compares the waveguide impedance and the ZU. So it finds that, okay, there is a mismatch. So depending on the mismatch, some part of the signal will get reflected back, and that reflected signal, I'm using this blue color to represent that reflected signal. So reflected signal means what? It will once again move back inside the port number 2. So you can see that the arrow is left side. So it means that now the port number 2 is going to act as a input port for the reflected signal. So as per our earlier discussion, that if you are feeding anything at port number 2, that will get divided between port number 3 and port number 4 equally. Now let us consider what is happening. Let us see at what is happening at the port number 1. Same thing. Whatever signal which is coming from port number 4, that will, when it reaches to the port number 1, once again that signal is going to compare what is the guide impedance, waveguide impedance at port number 2, and what is the impedance at ZK. So if any mismatch is there, then some amount of signal will get reflected back, and now that will be represented with the help of this blue color once again. Once again, this port number 1 for the reflected signal will behave like input port. So that signal, it will get divided equally between port number 3 and port number 4. Similarly, from here side, port number 3 and port number 4. So you can see that now the signal from port number 1 and signal from port number 2, both are heading towards port number 3 and 4. So port number 4 is acting as an input port, so forget about that. Now the port number 3, there we have connected a power meter. Now that power meter is going to show you that, okay, some power is reaching to port number 3. Now what we have to do, we have to adjust this ZK in such a way that the power recorded by the power meter at port number 3 should be 0. So how it is going to happen? Like you are varying this ZK so that the power meter will show you 0. That is going to happen only the amount of power which is getting reflected from port number 1, that is exactly equals to what the power which is reflected at port number 2. And that is going to happen only if ZK, it becomes equals to what? ZU. So the way the port number 2 is going to reflect the power, in a similar way, the port number 1 also is going to reflect some amount of power, because now ZK and ZU both are same. So amount of power which will get reflected back, and the phase of the signal which will get reflected back at port number 2 and 3, both are going to be same. So as we have discussed in E plenty, that if you are applying two signals along the at port number 1 and 2, and both are in same phase and same magnitude, then the power available in EM will be 0. So the moment the power meter shows you 0 reading, it means that the power reflected from 1 and 2 both are same, both are having same phase, and that is going to happen only if ZK equals to what? ZU. Now ZK, as I said, that it's a bank of resistor, you can say, which can be varied and can be read. So now you can read the value of ZK. So whatever will be the value of ZK, same will be the value of ZU. So the unknown impedance is now known to us. So this is one of the applications of the magic T. There are other applications also, but this will be sufficient to understand how to use this magic T. If you have any query, you can ask. Otherwise, we can move ahead. Okay, now, so magic T is done. Now the next one is directional coupler. So we are going to see the directional coupler. Directional coupler. It's a 4-port device, and yeah, it has got a lot of applications actually. So we'll see one or two. Now, directional coupler, it comprises of two main waveguides. So let us consider that this is one of the waveguides. And once again, I will just remind you that this directional coupler, that also is mode dependent. Okay, so it is going to work for mode TE10. So here you can see it actually comprises of two waveguides. So one above the other. Okay, so instead of referring 3D structure, I will be referring 2D. So it will be like this top, this layer, then the middle one, which is shared by both the waveguides, and the bottom one, like this. So now, since there are 4 apertures, this is first one, second one, then third one, this is fourth one. So I will separate them. The physical structure, in actual world, they are something like this, because you have to operate each port separately, and we must maintain some physical distance also. Now, once again, you can name it randomly. Port number 1, port number 2, port number 3, let us consider, and this is port number 4. Now, the directional coupler, it means that the coupling of the signal is made directional. So for that, what is done that, now see, both the waveguides are totally isolated. Electrically, they may be connected because they are sharing the middle layer, which is conductor. But field-wise, they are different. They are separate. Like the field in lower waveguide will never get coupled to the upper waveguide. But we want the coupling, directional coupler, so there should be coupling. So what I will do, I will make 2 apertures like this. So you can see that now the middle layer, 2 holes are made. Okay, one here, suppose, and the another one is here. Okay. Now, what should the size of the aperture? That totally depends on how much coupling you want actually, because the larger the size of the aperture, more will be the coupling. Smaller the size, so less will be the coupling. Okay. Now let's see how this device works. So consider that this is the main waveguide. The lower one is the main waveguide, and the upper one is the auxiliary waveguide. Now input signal is applied at port number 1. Now these 2 apertures, they are located in such a way that the distance between the 2 apertures is lambda by 4. Okay, this is the distance between the 2 apertures. So what happens that the signal which is coming from port number 1, it moves like this, and here it gets divided because now it finds that there are 2 different paths. Now the majority of the power will remain in the lower waveguide only, and the part of the very small signal. Once again, I will just emphasize that how much power will get coupled in the upper waveguide, that depends on the size of the aperture. So little amount is getting coupled in the upper waveguide, and there also the part of the signal move towards the left side, and the part of the signal will move towards the right hand side. Okay, and actually the division of the power is equal. Now in the lower waveguide, whatever majority of the power is available, that will move further, and once again when it reaches to this aperture, the power will get divided in 2 parts. once again, the majority of the power will be available at port number 2, and small amount will be coupled in the upper waveguide. And once again, part will move on the left hand side and the part will move on the right hand side. So this is what happens. So if you look at this scenario, so you will feel that, okay, the part of the signal will be available at port number 3 and port number 4, but that is not going to happen because of the gap of lambda by 4 between the two apertures. So what is happening actually? So let's see. See the power which is coming from port number 1 and following this path. And the majority of the power which is traveling in the lower part and getting coupled and in the upper arm. So you can see that the power which is moving from here to here, okay, and the power which is moving from here to here, or signal actually. So they are traveling same distance. Both are traveling lambda by 4 distance, whether the power, you talk about the power which is available in the lower arm and then from the second aperture, like here I will call this as a second aperture and here I will call this as first aperture. So the power which is available in the upper arm from the first aperture when it moves to the right hand side, and the power which is coming from the aperture number 2 and moving towards the right hand side, both have traveled the same distance. That is what lambda by 4. So there won't be any phase difference between the two signals which are coupled from port number 1 and port number 2. Since there is no phase difference, both the signals will get added and they will move towards port number 3 and will be available at port number 3. Now look at the other part of the signals which are trying to travel on the left hand side. So the power which has got coupled at port number 1 and heading on the left hand side, and the power which has got coupled at port number 2 and heading towards the left hand side. So actually the power which is coupled at port number 2, it started its journey from, let us consider the reference point of first aperture. It has started its journey from aperture 1, then it moves to the aperture 2, and from there it comes back to the aperture 1. So you can see that this signal actually travels a distance of lambda by 2. It has started from aperture 1 and the lower waveguide, then it reaches to aperture 2, so it has traveled a distance of lambda by 4. And that signal, it gets coupled in the upper waveguide and it heads towards the left hand side. And when it reaches back to the port number 1, it has traveled a total distance of lambda by 2. By the time this signal reaches to port number 1, a new signal comes. And so a new signal which is coming at port number 2. So now these two signals, which is one which is new and coming at port number 1, aperture number 1, and the earlier signal which has left uh, earlier and it has come back to the aperture 1. Now these two signals, they are out of phase because the new signal which is coming and the earlier signal which has traveled a distance of lambda by 2. So since it is traveling a distance of lambda by 2, uh, its phase difference with respect to the new signal will be what? 180 degrees. So now what is going to happen that this newly signal and the earlier old signal, since they are out of phase and both are trying to travel towards port number 4, both are getting cancelled out and there is no output at port number 4. So you are going to get output at port number 3 only. No signal will be available at port number 4. But this is going to happen only for the case of lambda by 4. So when I say lambda is involved, it means that lambda straight relation is there, that lambda equals to what? C by F. Since C is fixed, F. So if the lambda is fixed, then F must be fixed. It means that this device is designed at a particular for a particular frequency only. So if you'll operate it at some other frequency, then this device may not work, or it can work only for the multiple of or the odd multiple of this frequencies, because you have to maintain, see, either the lambda, the distance between the two apertures should be what? lambda by 4 or odd multiple of lambda by 4, because it will take even multiple of the lambda by 4. So if we multiply it by 2, so it becomes what? Lambda by 2 distance. So we don't want that. The distance between the two aperture should be what? Multiple of, odd multiple of lambda by 4. So therefore, you can operate this waveguide at, suppose it is designed to work at suppose 10 gigahertz. Okay, then you can operate it not at a multiple of this 10 gigahertz, like 10, then 20. No, the 10 k baud you can use it as what? 30, then 50, odd multiples. So this is the property of the directional coupler. And the behavior is, see, if you treat the upper waveguide as primary waveguide, and if you feed the signal at port number 4, suppose, then the majority of the power will be available at port number 3, and the power available at port number 1 will be 0, and the coupled amount of power that will be available at port number 2. So now there is nothing like if you change the reference port, then the behavior is going to change. That's why all these devices, 4 devices which we have discussed so far, they are all called as reciprocal devices. Reciprocal devices. The response in both the direction is going to remain same. If you have any query, you can ask.
Hello.
हाँ, बोलिए.
So, wouldn't the signal loop around the apertures?
No, it's not going to happen, because the moment the signal which is coming from aperture 1 and 2 means it takes a lower path, lower waveguide, and then moves to the upper waveguide and comes back to the first arm. There itself, it is getting cancelled out. That's why looping of the signal is not going to take place.
Okay, sir.
At some other frequency, it may happen, but at the design frequency, it is not going to happen because of the cancellation. Since it is getting cancelled out, the existence of that signal at that place is not possible out, so they must disappear.
Okay, sir.
But other frequency that may happen, looping.
Okay, sir. Yes.
See, must be many clear, but as you move deeper, then you feel okay, is it going to happen like this or not? Then finally, the mathematics reveals a lot actually. But we are not taking the help of mathematics. We are keeping it as theoretical as possible. Okay, so we'll move to the other devices. Now we are going to talk about non-reciprocal devices. Means the response of the device will differ in different directions. Like a simple wire, it's reciprocal in nature. Whatever be the orientation of the wire, if you are exciting that wire with the help of a potential difference, so there will be flow of current, which will move from higher to the lower in a conventional. And if you change the orientation of the wire, then also the behavior will be same. Higher potential to the lower potential, there will be flow of current. But if this is not happening, then that particular device can be declared as non-reciprocal in nature, like diode. Now, in electrical field, it is true that the current always flows from higher potential to the lower potential. But the diode, if it is forward bias, then that is true. From higher potential to the lower potential, there will be flow of current. But if it is reverse bias, so still the current will try to flow from higher potential to the lower potential. But because of this barrier potential, which is now larger than the applied potential, so it doesn't allow the flow of the current. So diode is non-reciprocal in nature, but wire is reciprocal in nature. Okay, so we are going to discuss that category of the device which are non-reciprocal in nature. So for that, the material which we use, see all these devices which we are going to discuss about, all are comprising of a rectangular waveguide or circular waveguide, and they are operated at TE10 mode only, or TE11 if it is circular waveguide, dominant mode only. But as we have covered the four devices, remember all the devices they were with a direction. The device is going to behave in a similar way. But now, since we are going to move towards the non-reciprocal devices, so of course some material has to be there, which will be introduced inside the waveguide, which will alter the property of the waveguide if the direction of propagation of the signal changes. Like if the signal is moving from left side to the right hand side, then the device will respond in a particular way. But if the same signal, when it moves from right to the left side, then the device should respond it in a different way. So there is a meaning of being non-reciprocal. So the material which we use is ferrite. Okay, ferrite is a magnetic material. Now we'll discuss about the ferrite material, and the time permits will continue, otherwise we'll stop. So you can see that ferrite material. So to understand that behavior of the ferrite material, we'll not discuss the detail of the ferrite material, but those who are interested can refer David N. Pozar, I think 12th chapter. So there you can have a little idea about the ferrite, but those who are it's comfortable with mathematics, they can gain more information, because mathematically it is analyzed. Or you can just read the abstract after every mathematical equation, so you will get the meaning, what the author is trying to tell about the ferrite material. But with reference to that chapter only, I'm going to tell you about the ferrite, property of the ferrite. Now, now let us consider that this is the ferrite material. It is just the way, it is just the representation. Okay. This is the ferrite material, and ferrite material, it is biased with the help of DC magnetic field. So here I have written B0. It represents the magnetic field density which is externally provided to this ferrite material. Now, the length of the ferrite material, it matters a lot, and of course the B0. Now, suppose if a signal moves from left side to the right hand side, okay, and it is, suppose it is vertically polarized like this electric field. Okay, actually I should refer magnetic field because it is ferrite material. Because it is magnetic nature, in nature, that's why I should refer actually the magnetic field, but magnetic field always represented in loop form. So to avoid that loop shape, I have used, or you can simply write it as H field. So if it is suppose moving from left side to the right hand side, so what happens that this field, it will get rotated under the influence of this biased ferrite material. And what we'll do that, I will observe this, all this process from the left hand side, and I will draw this diagram here. So what is happening that this is the orientation of the electric field. So when it covered the entire length, this is what L equals to 0. So when it reaches to the other end, that is at L equals to, sorry, I will make it Z. Z equals to 0. That is the length. Z means the Z axis. And when Z equals to what? L. So what happened that depending on the length, this field, it will get rotated. So let us consider that it has got rotated by 45° in clockwise direction. So by the time the wave it reaches, it travels the entire ferrite length and reaches at the other end, that is right hand side. So it will get tilted by 45° and in clockwise direction. Okay. Now, if suppose the same wave, now it is moved from the right hand side and it is coming back to the left hand side. So if this material is on that, this will rotate by once again by 45° only, but this time in anti-clockwise direction because the direction has got changed. But this is not going to happen. This is the reciprocal behavior. Since I said that the ferrite material, it is non-reciprocal in nature, so I will draw the diagram with the help of this blue color. So the moment it comes back on the left hand side, so the electric field, the orientation of the electric field, this is electric field, it will once again move by 45°, that is true, but the orientation, sorry, the direction in which the field will rotate, it will be once again clockwise only. So irrespective of the direction in which the wave is moving, but the tilting of the wave, it will be clockwise in both the direction. That totally depends on the biasing. The polarity of the biasing, that B0, if it changes, then the tilting of the wave, it may take place in anti-clockwise direction, but by 45° only. 45° because that totally depends on the length. So if the length is larger, then the tilting will be more. It can be 50°, 60°. So that can be controlled with the help of length. But the tilting will take place in the clockwise or anti-clockwise direction. That totally depends on the biasing. So it is biased in such a way that the tilting of the field, it will be occurring in the clockwise direction, what will be the direction of propagation. So this behavior is actually non-reciprocal in nature. You can compare this behavior with the help of a screw. So if you are having a screw like this, okay, threaded. So if suppose the screw is what, it is rotated in clockwise direction. So it moves what? Towards the right hand side. It means that if the screw moves on the right hand, towards the right hand side, then the rotation of the screw will be what? In clockwise direction. Same is true if the same screw is what? It is moving from towards left hand side. So here, so a person who is standing on the other side, that is on the right hand side and looking towards the left hand side, once again you will find that okay, the screw is what? Tilting in the clockwise, sorry, it is rotating in the clockwise direction. So this behavior, you can say it is reciprocal. If the screw is moving away from you, the pointed end, it is moving away from you. So for that, the rotation should be clockwise direction. But this is not going to happen in case of ferrite. So if the screw, suppose the wave, it is representing the screw. So wave, if it is moving from left to right hand side, then the orientation of the field, it will be clockwise. But if the same wave, when it moves from the other side, that is from right hand side to the left hand side, once again it should rotate in clockwise direction, but it's not going to happen. It will rotate in the anti-clockwise direction. So that is the property here of the ferrite material. It is non-reciprocal in nature. And using this property, we are going to make all the non-reciprocal devices. So you have to keep this in mind. Now, so we'll see the remaining devices in the next lecture, and this chapter will get over. So if you have any query, you can ask.